Something happens. A message arrives. A word is spoken. A plan collapses. And within a single heartbeat, before you have even decided to react, a wave of emotion crashes over you. Anger floods your chest. Anxiety tightens your stomach. The whole day is hijacked, and you feel completely powerless to stop it. We tell ourselves a simple story about this. The event made me angry. She made me feel worthless. This situation is stressing me out. We treat our emotions as things that are done to us by the outside world, as if other people hold a remote control to our inner state. Almost 2,000 years ago, a former slave named Epictetus declared that this story is a lie, and it is a lie that keeps you enslaved. Epictetus knew something about chains. He was born into bondage in the Roman Empire, and according to tradition, his leg was shattered and left permanently crippled by a cruel master. He had every reason to be consumed by rage and despair. Instead, he became one of the most serene and powerful minds in history. His secret was a single radical idea. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about events. And because the judgment happens inside you, the power to change it is also inside you. Out of this insight, Epictetus built a precise 3-step method for intercepting a destructive emotion before it takes control. A technique that anticipated modern cognitive therapy by nearly 2,000 years. Before the 3 steps, you have to understand the principle underneath them. In the opening of his famous handbook, the Enchiridion, Epictetus lays it out with surgical clarity. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. Thus, death is nothing terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. Look carefully at that example. Death, Epictetus says, is not inherently terrifying. If it were, it would terrify everyone equally, like fire burns every hand that touches it. But Socrates faced his own execution with total calm. So the terror cannot be coming from death itself. It must be coming from the judgment, the story, the interpretation that most people attach to death. This changes everything. Between the event and your emotion, there is a hidden step that feels invisible because it happens so fast. That step is your judgment. The insult is just sound waves. The rejection is just words on a screen. The traffic jam is just stationary metal. None of these things contain anger or misery. You manufacture the emotion in the split second when you decide what the event means. And here is the liberating part. If your suffering is manufactured by your own judgments, then you are not a helpless victim of the world. You are the one holding the pen. The 3 steps are simply how you take back control of the writing. Step 1. Pause and catch the impression before you obey it. The entire method lives or dies in the first half second. An impression strikes you, a raw first reaction, and your instinct is to immediately believe it and act on it. Epictetus teaches you to intercept it instead. In his discourses, he gives us the exact words to say to a rising emotion. Wait for me a little, impression. Allow me to see who you are and what you are an impression of. Allow me to put you to the test. Do not suffer it to lead you on by picturing to you what will follow. Otherwise, it will take possession of you and go off with you wherever it will. This is extraordinary. He is telling you to speak directly to the feeling. Wait, let me look at you first. That tiny gap. That deliberate pause is where all your freedom lives. In that moment, you are refusing to be dragged off by the impression like a prisoner in chains. Most people never insert this pause. The impression appears and they instantly obey, sprinting down the path it paints for them, imagining every catastrophe that will follow. Step 1 is simply this. When the surge hits, stop, breathe, and say, "Wait, let me examine you before I believe you." Step 2. Test the judgment and separate the event from your story about it. Once you have paused, you interrogate the impression. You ask, is this reaction actually about the event, or is it about my opinion of the event? Epictetus insists these are two completely different things. In the Enchiridion, he writes, "It is not the accident that distresses this person, but the view he chooses to take of it. Men are disturbed, not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." And he pushes it even further with a sharper example. "Remember that foul words or blows in themselves are no outrage, but your judgment that they are so." So in step 2, you pull the two apart. Here is the raw event. A person said certain words. And here, separately, is the story you added. That this makes me disrespected. That I am powerless. That this is unbearable. You examine that added story like the goldsmith testing the coin. Is it true? Is it certain? Is this thing actually within my control? Or am I disturbing myself over something outside my power? 9 times out of 10, you'll discover that the event was neutral and every ounce of the suffering was hiding inside the judgment you quietly attached to it. Step 3. Withhold your agreement and choose your response on purpose. Here is the step almost everyone forgets. After you pause and test the judgment, you still have one final power, the most important one of all. You get to decide whether to agree with the impression or not. The Stoics call this giving or withholding your assent. An impression can knock on the door, but it cannot come in and rule you unless you open the door and say, "Yes, I believe you." So, in step 3, you consciously refuse to hand your agreement to a false or harmful judgment. The impression says, "This is a catastrophe." You examine it, find it false, and calmly reply, "No, this is merely inconvenient, and it is not within my control, so it is not worth my peace." Then you choose the response that reason recommends instead of the one the raw emotion demanded. This is not suppression. You are not clenching your teeth and pretending you feel nothing. You are dissolving the emotion at its root by refusing to feed it the judgment it needs to survive. A fire without fuel goes out. An anger without the belief that you have been wronged simply has nothing to burn. Once you truly absorb this method, you begin to see judgments everywhere, hiding behind every emotion. Epictetus traced all of it back to this single root. In his Discourses, he said, "What is weeping and sighing? A judgment. What is misfortune? A judgment. What is strife, disagreement, fault-finding, accusing? All judgments and nothing beside." Every storm of feeling you have ever suffered was at its core a judgment you agreed to. And that is the most hopeful sentence in all of Stoicism. Because you cannot always control the events that strike you, but you can learn, with practice, to govern the judgments you attach to them. Remember who taught this. Not a comfortable aristocrat, but a man who had been owned as property and left physically broken. Epictetus could not control a single external circumstance of his early life, yet by mastering his judgments, he became freer in a cell than his masters ever were on their thrones. If he could do it from there, the method is available to you wherever you are sitting right now. So, the next time a wave of emotion rises to hijack your day, run the 3 steps. First, pause and say to the impression, "Wait, let me look at you." Second, test it and separate the raw event from the story you have added. Third, withhold your agreement and deliberately choose the response reason recommends. Pause, test, choose. That is the entire method. It will feel clumsy and slow at first, like any new skill, but practiced daily, it rewires how you meet the world. Slowly, the events that used to control you lose their grip because you have reclaimed the one thing that was always yours, the judgment in between. You were never disturbed by things, only by your opinions about them. And your opinions, unlike the world, are finally yours to command. If this gave you a tool worth keeping, subscribe to Stoic Mind, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which of the 3 steps you find hardest to practice. Until next time, stay steadfast.